Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. We are the news division of United Network, and we are also part of CARE, the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. And we bring you the real news. We've got lots of content we put out throughout the week, and you guys actually don't have to be a member to get access to all of that, but you'll just catch the information about a week later after our members get it. But you can follow us on YouTube and Rumble to see all of our videos, assuming they're not taken down because, as everybody knows, there's a lot of stuff getting flagged right now. And a lot of people are having to take down content that you wouldn't think you'd have to take down. Now, why would that be, right? Which is why we have our own platform, because we have to be able to put out this information for you guys, right? So if you want more information about United Network and what we do, and perhaps consider becoming a member, you can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. This is a Week in Review podcast. So I take some of our top stories that we've discussed over the last week. I give you some highlights so you know what you may want to go back and watch. Check out. There's only so much I can do in an audio podcast, but I do my best. This is also a great way to share UNN with other people. Obviously, this podcast is free and you can just send them the link. So please consider doing that. This is how we change the world, and we need everyone involved to make that happen. With all the content we put out there, and we're going to put out some really high-level intel in this episode, I encourage you guys to use your discernment. Figure out for yourself what feels right for you. Just because someone has a podcast and they say something, or someone is on cable news or whatever it is and has their own show, doesn't make it accurate. We are living in a day and age where you really have to tune inward and turn inward, as opposed to relying on someone just because you think they're important for whatever reason. All right. As far as I'm concerned, we are all on the same playing field, and there's a lot of stuff out there that isn't real. There's a lot of lies being told right now. And the only way to really know the difference between a truth and a lie is to use your discernment, because truth has a certain frequency, lies have a certain frequency. And when you learn those frequencies, then you can detect what is what. And when you figure that out, share what you know with other people. That is how we're all going to grow and learn. We're going to do this together. Now, obviously, there is a lot going on this week. I felt like there's a lot going on last week, but some of the things that we discussed in the last podcast episode have come to fruition. We are dealing with a government shutdown in the U.S. We had this crazy meeting with these generals and admirals we're going to talk about. That's going to be a little bit later in this episode. So if you're looking for that content, just fast forward a little bit. But we've got some really great stories to get to from our field messengers and also our news team. So let's get going with that. Here's the rundown of stories you may have missed this week on UNN. All right, let's kick things off with our incredible field messengers. Now, for those of you who are new to UNN, our mission is really to change the face of news. And that doesn't mean just change the person that's given you the news. It's really changing the whole industry. And, as someone that was kind of brought up in the system, I went to journalism school. I worked at small TV stations. I did that whole thing before working with UNN. And it really allowed me to see all the problems within what we call news, or these news stations, these networks, so to speak. And a lot of it is just a breakdown in communication, because there are people out there that really want to share what's real, what's really going on in their communities. And a lot of times they're just not able to do that. There are filters. Sometimes those are algorithms. Sometimes those are news directors telling you can't air certain things, or, even higher up than that, station managers or people that own TV networks. And we believe the best way to, not be filtered anymore is just to reach out and share what's going on in our own communities. And that's what our field messengers are all about. So I want to talk about some of the stories that our awesome field messengers have created for this week. But I also want to encourage you guys, if you like what we're doing, why not participate? Why not be part of us changing the news? You know, we all have this negative perception of the news. Well, let's change it. Let's change it together. So there's more information on our website at unitednetwork.earth if you want more information about our Field Messenger program, what that looks like. But it really is submit what you want to submit when you want to submit it. And we have a team of people that can take that story, take that information from you and turn it into a story. We are giving people a voice that is kind of unprecedented, right? Unfiltered, if you will. And so this is how we change the world. So if you want more information on that, check out our website. And like I said, we're here to help you guys. We got a whole team of people that can help out. All right, let's talk about some of the stories we released this week. So Amy out of New Jersey does a report on how prices, specifically at discount retailers, are climbing in the United States. We've got some stores here. It may be the same in other countries, like we've got Dollar Tree stores. And originally, these were stores that were supposed to have very inexpensive items, sometimes $1 or less. But those prices are slowly going up. It's kind of become a joke here in the U.S. The Dollar Tree stores are now, well, it started out like $1.25. I think now she said there are items that are $1.75. There's even items, there's sections of the stores, right, that are like $3, $5. And they're claiming this is due to tariffs. Who really knows what's going on behind the scenes there? But it's just a report on how prices are climbing even for these discount stores. And of course, we're seeing that all over the world. Bob out of Ireland takes us to this really cool eco-village, and it serves as a practical model for sustainable communities, which we're all about. We need to live sustainably. We need to be supporting each other. We're going through a transition right now where a lot of these really large corporations, governments are going to start to fold. We're actually already seeing this happen with the government shutdown in the U.S. And as that happens, it is an opportunity for us to rise up in a very peaceful way and to help each other, support each other, and create positive systems that really benefit all organic life, including humanity. And so I love the idea of these eco-villages where this particular village that Bob checked out is all about giving back through education. So they have a lot of people that have chosen to live in this community. And I think he said they work locally with the various universities, colleges in the area, and they help educate in different ways. And so very beautiful thing. Thank you, Bob, for that story. Emma out of Spain talks about living soil. So what in the world is living soil? Emma is out of Fuerteventura, and she happened to go to this restaurant with some of her friends. And little did she know that this restaurant really does everything farm to table. So they have this beautiful garden, and it's not just beautiful because everything looks nice and pretty. Some of the most amazing gardens that produce the best produce don't always look that pretty. But things like living soil is what really brings these things to life, right? So in this particular restaurant, every week they have a different menu. Everything is vegan because they grow everything right there, on site. And it's made with special compost and living soil. So she was talking a little bit about earthworms. If you've ever been to a farmer's market, a lot of times you'll see people selling topsoil with earthworms in them. And the reason why is because nature really has a solution for everything. It's really when we get involved unknowingly and we do things that we don't even realize are destructive that things go awry. But these earthworms are incredible for restoring the soil and making it living soil once again. And I believe they said they also use dried manure from goats. So it's this whole recycling process that nature naturally would do if we just left it alone. But we have to learn to work with nature and what we're going to be doing moving forward. And this was an excellent example of how a restaurant could do that. Jerry out of Australia takes us to a local market. Speaking of farmers markets, he takes us to a place in Tamsworth, which again is in Australia, actually in New South Wales, and shows us some of the fresh produce, the handmade goods. He talks to some people. I got the feeling that this is a place that Jerry really likes to go to. He said the weather really wasn't working out for him that day, so the amount of people that weren't, as high, but still just trying to share what his community is doing. He says this has been ongoing now. This market has been ongoing for about 10 years. All right, Ade from Nigeria takes us to a local grammar school, and he actually is a alumni from this school. But this school's been around a long time. So this year they celebrated their 117th Founders Day, and this brings past and present students together. And I believe Ade said he left the school about 35 years ago. And I think this might have been the first time he came back, but he was already talking about coming back the next year. It's a beautiful scene because when people come back, they give back in various ways. They have good times together. It looked like there were some kind of parties going on, different events that they had, and really just a celebration of these things they've been able to accomplish together in the last 117 years. Akira from Japan tells us about the Bon Dance. And if you do a search online, you can find out more information on this because that's what I did. I wanted to learn more about the Bon Dance. So this is a celebration, and it brings various communities together in Japan. Technically, it's to honor the spirits of their ancestors. It's really a celebration of life, though, is how I view it. And it's a summer tradition. People gather around, and based on the information I found online, it's typically held outdoors, and you have like a center stage, and then there's people dancing. It's a similar dance. So think of, kind of like not a line dance per se, but, people all moving in sync with one another. And it's to celebrate people of the past, their ancestors. So very fun. I love learning about other cultures like this. Helen from Australia talks about farming, but a unique way of farming. So there's a farming pioneer that she really likes. I believe he was from Japan too. And anyways, she mentions his name in the video. It's kind of hard to pronounce, but he practiced creating farms or, gardens, if you will, that's in harmony with the land. So it wasn't so much, like I said earlier, about gardens looking really pretty. It's, in fact, what he does has been referred to as natural farming, or this is my favorite, the do-nothing farming, which makes a lot of sense to me because you hear these stories of farmers in the past having to get up at the crack of dawn and everything that they have to do to tend to their farming, right? To tend to their farms. And I always thought, while I admire their work ethic, I always thought there's got to be a better way to do this. Why do we have to slave over the land? Like nature, we're kind of doing something wrong, aren't we? And I'm not a farmer. I don't know what that is. But when I hear things like this of people testing different ways to grow crops where it really is a hands-off process and you're having fantastic results, to me, that makes a lot of sense. So I love the idea of a do-nothing farming. Really, this guy, again, I can't remember his name, but he's really a philosopher, right? That's really a philosophy, and it's a beautiful one, in my opinion. All right, Isabel from Canada. She has done a report before, I think about the llamas, a program that's up there in Canada. And in this story, it's like she took that and kind of expanded on it because she has started this educational program. She lives on a farm. She's a homeschool mom, just like me. I don't live on a farm. I'd love to live on a farm. Hopefully sometime in the near future that will happen. But she's been able to take her farm and have local children. They were kind of look like all ages, I would say like middle school age or so. And she's teaching them how to tend to the animals. So she had various animals on her farm and just be in the outdoors and interact with nature. And she just tells us a little bit more about the program and how it works and how the kids are benefiting from it. And finally, Bob is back. So we talked about Bob earlier with the Eco Village, right? And this is kind of a continuation. So Bob's out of Ireland, and we go back to that Eco Village, and this story focuses more on the farm. We've got a lot of farm stories this week, don't we? which is important. Who knows what's going to happen with our whole supply chain? So Bob talks with a guy named Kevin who shares some wisdom about sustainable living, organic food production, and how the farm supports the local community. And really, they focus on the seeds, which is something that I never really thought about before the last few years, really, which is kind of silly because everything starts with the seed, right? And, you go in these stores and you see seeds everywhere, but that doesn't mean they're quality seeds. That's kind of the lie, right? And so you have to start with good seeds in order to get good crops. And so really what they're focused on is improving the genetics of the seeds. And how they support the local community is people pay a fee, and then they can come each week and they pick out their vegetables. And what I loved about their system is it's really teaching people to take what you need, but not to be greedy. Because, if you're running a real farm and you're not just getting stuff shipped to you, what you yield each week, each month, it's going to change. So to guarantee that someone can have X of this and X of that, that's not really right, right? Or not accurate, I should say, because it really just depends on how the crop did that week. And so this is teaching people when they come, you may have wanted 4 carrots, but there's really only 3 or 2 or whatever, and you don't want to take from other people. So it's, people pick out their own vegetables, but it's always keeping other people in mind. And that's a very simple, may sound like a simple concept, but it's something that we aren't really accustomed to, right? We just know, I need X what it is, and I'm just going to get it because there's a surplus of everything, even though it's not quality stuff usually when you go to the stores. So this is a completely different way of looking at it, and was very interesting farm and way that they're supporting their local community. Okay, here are the stories the team and I worked on for you guys this week. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the U.S. is dealing with a government shutdown. So this started at midnight going into October 1st. So let's talk a little bit about it. Now, this whole shutdown happened as the government's new fiscal year began. And it is leaving hundreds of thousands of federal employees without work or pay. Essential workers like military personnel, TSA agents, and air traffic controllers must keep working despite missing paychecks.
Here's what you need to know. Each agency has a guideline on how to operate when the government is shut down. That usually means suspending activities which are deemed non-essential to the protection of life and property. It also means halting pay to federal workers who fit those categories. Federal courts and the Federal Reserve will remain open, and certain U.S.-owned institutions like the U.S. Post Office and Amtrak, which don't rely on the congressional spending bill, will also continue to operate. Those of the IRS, on the other hand, will shut down. Other regulatory agencies will partially close, as well as some museums and most national parks. Key economic data reports could also be delayed, creating uncertainty for financial markets.
So this shutdown follows a pattern seen in past administrations, and Trump is also warning of mass federal firings to cut government waste. At least let's put that in quotes, okay? To cut government waste. Meanwhile, more than 150,000 federal employees are set to resign under a deferred resignation program from Trump's second term. So this was something that they opted into, and it's just now taking effect because they just completed the fiscal year. And this is marking the largest government exit in history because so many people opted into this program. Experts warn that losing so many experienced workers could threaten national security, public health, and economic stability. With both political parties refusing to compromise, there is no clear end in sight, leaving millions of Americans caught in the fallout. Now, those of you who have been following UNN, you know the real reason behind this shutdown, and it has nothing to do with what they're talking about, right? They're talking about healthcare for illegals, blah, 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 blah. These are all talking points from their respective parties. And it's getting really weird out there. Just a little side note, like each side are creating weird AI videos. I don't know if this is supposed to distract us. I don't know. It's absolutely insane. My recommendation, keep it here on UNN for what's really going on. And of course, Kim's Global Intelligence Agency reports, because we're going to be talking a lot more about this moving forward. Okay. But it started this week. All right, let's talk about disaster cleanup efforts, something else that we've really got to improve upon. After Hurricane Helene swept through southern Appalachia, debris cleanup in western North Carolina has been ongoing now for more than a year. But controversy has emerged over how much is being removed. Contractors hired by federal agencies are clearing rivers and streams aggressively, sometimes removing live trees and old wood without landowner permission, which environmentalists warn can harm habitats, increase erosion, and damage wetlands.
The debris removal has done more damage than Helene.
Will Harland is the Southeast Director of the Center for Biological Diversity.
We've seen those contractors using the rivers as highways for large machinery, heavy equipment, excavators, dump trucks, driving up and down our beloved creeks and streams.
Now, some counties that opted for private contractors working with state biologists have seen fewer issues as they focus on careful restoration rather than sheer debris volume. Efforts are now shifting towards sustainable recovery, including a $10 million state-backed river restoration project led by Mountain True and volunteer initiatives along rivers like the Green River, where locals are helping remove debris and stabilize riverbanks to protect both wildlife and communities. Since India launched its Digital India Initiative in 2015, the country has transformed into a global leader in digital transactions, enabling everything from paying bills to buying street food via mobile phones. But this rapid shift has fueled a surge in cybercrime, with scammers stealing $2.74 billion in 2024 alone, often targeting unsuspecting first-time digital users through schemes like digital arrest scams.
Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay is a senior journalist and author based in Delhi. On 12th July this year, he called back a number after receiving a recorded message warning that his mobile would be disconnected. He walked right into a cyber trap called a digital arrest, a troubling scam where fraudsters put victims under an illegal digital custody, citing false accusations and extort money. Mukhopadhyay was kept under an illegal digital custody for 28 hours.
In the night also, I was told to sleep in the study where my computer was there, and I had to sleep in the gaze of the camera by turning the camera on the couch where I was sleeping. So it was a very traumatic experience.
Exploiting trust in authorities and slow cybercrime laws enable fraudsters to manipulate victims into handing over their savings, sometimes with tragic consequences. Experts say fighting this epidemic isn't just about technology. It requires awareness, community education, and tools like two-factor authentication, which we've talked about before, while victims speaking out can help protect others from falling prey to these scams. Pet surrenders. This is a sad story, guys. Pet surrenders, giving up your pet, are on the rise as the cost of caring for animals climbs, leaving shelters overwhelmed and many families heartbroken. In 2024, 5.8 million cats and dogs entered U.S. shelters, with hundreds of thousands euthanized as adoptions lagged behind. Veterinary care and grooming costs have soared 42% since 2019, while food prices are up 22%, straining household budgets and forcing tough decisions for pet owners.
This year alone, we've already taken in 1,700 animals, of which 800 is owner surrenders. It's a growing number. We're seeing tons of demand for owner surrender in particular, and a lot of really heartbreaking, really emergent situations that families are facing. These are folks that have nowhere to live, let alone with their animals. They can't afford the cost of living. They can't find pet-friendly housing. That is a massive challenge that they can afford. They're being displaced to the street, to their vehicle, just to have a place for shelter with their animals, with or without really. People are struggling with access to care for their animals, and people are even struggling with access to care for themselves. We're getting multiple stories a week of folks in hospital with their pets living in the vehicle with them just to make sure that they're close to family. It's a heartbreaking situation for sure.
The growing influence of corporate-owned vet clinics has also driven hidden price hikes, making care less affordable and less transparent. Advocates say supporting independent clinics, demanding clearer regulations, and raising awareness can help keep more pets in loving homes. Hong Kong's once thriving hawker scene, so these are street vendors selling everything from produce to cooked food, has dwindled dramatically, with numbers dropping 80% to just 233 in 2024. Strict government licensing rules, sanitation concerns, and efforts to move vendors into food centers have nearly wiped out traditional Dai Pai Dongs, which fell from 200 in the 1940s to just 17 today. While these policies improve safety and order, they also eroded a key part of Hong Kong's cultural identity.
In the 1980s, they were fully expecting that within the decade, there would be no more Dai Pai Dong. There was a change in policy so that children could not inherit licenses from their parents. Some of the alternatives that were offered to Dai Pai Dong store holders was to go into shop tenancies inside of municipal service buildings.
Experts now argue that reviving hawker stalls could both preserve heritage and attract tourists seeking authentic local experiences, suggesting dedicated hawker zones similar to those in mainland China as a way forward. Toll roads promise smoother, faster commutes, but they remain one of the most divisive issues in transportation. Supporters say tolls help fund safer, better maintained roads, while critics argue they unfairly burden low-income drivers, amount to double taxation, and often lack transparency, since nearly half of toll revenue in the U.S., at least, isn't even used for road maintenance.
Did you know that roads could be sold? They can. Foreign companies now own a lot of U.S. toll roads, and they're able to profit from rising tolls while the infrastructure crumbles. The Indiana Toll Road is a perfect example of this. So it's a vital link between Ohio and Illinois, but instead of keeping it in public hands, Governor Mitch Daniels leased it out for 75 years. 75 years, that's an entire lifetime. Daniels pushed this deal as part of his Major Moves infrastructure plan, selling it as a no-tax solution. And what he didn't mention was that Goldman Sachs advised him to do the deal while secretly investing in the winning bidder, which was a private international link-up between two other foreign companies. The state was told that the road would only generate $1.92 billion over 75 years of public control. But the private investors knew better. They expected to make their $3.85 billion bid back in just 15 years. And then every toll collected after that was going to be pure profit.
Privately managed toll roads raise further concerns as they profit from congestion on public highways, which can discourage improvements to free routes. While toll roads might feel safer and more reliable, experts stress the system needs reform, with fair contracts, transparent oversight, and limits on corporate windfalls to ensure roads truly serve the public. Scotland generates vast amounts of wind power, but nearly 40% of its potential energy in early 2024 never reached the grid because transition systems couldn't handle the surplus, forcing operators to pay wind farms to shut down at a cost of more than 117 million euros.
2013, we were producing up to 130% of our electrical needs. So there can be quite a lot of curtailment on several turbines. There's active network management. The wind turbine will be shut down because the network can't handle the load. There's been a moratorium on any new grid connections. There is potential for some micro generation, but nothing of any scale. So when you're in a place like Orkney where you have some of the best generation potential, it's a complete waste.
The problem lies in outdated infrastructure, with many turbines located far from population centers and limited transmission lines to carry power south. Massive investments like subsea cables and high voltage upgrades are underway, but they come with steep financial, environmental, and social costs, sparking debate over who truly benefits from Scotland's wind boom, local communities or distant markets. Homeowners in Australia are facing rapidly rising insurance costs as floods, fires, and storms become more frequent, leaving many struggling to afford coverage. Premium hikes are driven by factors like severe weather events, inflation, building costs, and global reassurance pressures, even as major insurers report record profits. $6.1 billion to be exact in 2024, which is triple their usual average.
So how is insurance supposed to work in these situations? In theory, it's simple. You pay your insurance premiums each year. The insurance promises to cover damage from events like cyclones, storms, fires, and then when disaster strikes, they pay you out so you can rebuild. The insurance industry even has protocols for big disasters. After Cyclone Alfred, the Insurance Council of Australia declared an insurance catastrophe, which meant it's supposed to fast-track help. Insurers prioritise customers, send extra assessors, and coordinate with government agencies. The goal of this is to get claims sorted quickly so people can start putting their lives back together. Unfortunately, this doesn't always work out. When thousands of claims pour in at once, insurance companies face huge costs and logistical nightmares. Some insurers handle this really well, but historically many have fallen short.
With 750,000 properties at high disaster risk and another 1.5 million at moderate risk, many Australians either can't get insurance or are paying tens of thousands more annually, often without clearer explanations from insurers. Experts suggest homeowners can reduce costs by making homes safer, shopping around for prices, asking about discounts, or paying annually instead of monthly. While avocados are celebrated as a healthy, trendy food, their global production comes with serious environmental and social costs. Massive farms in countries like Mexico and Chile drain scarce water resources, clear forests, harm biodiversity, and rely on low-paid labor, sometimes under the influence of organized crime. Industrial practice like gassing fruit, look that one up, with ethylene and selling adulterated avocado oils further reduce quality and nutritional value.
There is no official U.S. rules on these things. In other words, olive oil has an international definition of what extra virgin means, but not with avocado oil. There's no legal binding definition of the way that they're supposed to process these things. This has opened up the door for a lot of corruption. There's all sorts of scams going on, trying to dilute avocado oil with other oils, but on the label, you can't tell the difference. What was really shocking in this research study, there were some products that had zero avocado oil in them. Instead, there was soybean oil, canola oil.
Despite these issues, avocados remain nutritious. They are rich in healthy fats, fibers, and vitamins. But consumers are encouraged to make informed choices, seek fair trade or sustainably certified options. Basically, guys, know where your fruit is coming from, okay? And you can avoid all of these issues and create a more sustainable food system. Africa's luxury tourism promises high-end experiences and big spending, but it often comes at a cost to local communities and ecosystems. Exclusive lodges and all-inclusive resorts generate profits that largely benefit foreign companies and a small local elite, while keeping most tourists on site and providing few meaningful jobs for locals.
Africa is on the cusp of a boom in luxury tourism, and that's partly driven by a change in sentiment after the pandemic. Now people are traveling for wellness. They also want once-in-a-lifetime and bucket list experiences, and Africa has that in loads and bounds, especially when it comes to encounters with wildlife and conservation. So that's drawing a lot of interest, and at the same time, many of the world's top hoteliers and investors see Africa as one of the last underpenetrated markets for travel and tourism. So that's also stimulating great hotel development across the continent.
In Kenya and Tanzania, projects have sparked land disputes, protests, and legal challenges, particularly when lodges encroach on local land or critical wildlife habitats or routes. Advocates urge travelers to support locally owned lodges, community-led tours, and local artisans to ensure luxury tourism benefits both people and the environment rather than just outsiders. Okay, now it's time for some updates from the Global Intelligence Agency. So Kim Gogan is the head of the GIA, and she gives us some reports throughout the week. Sometimes they come in messages, text messages that are shared on our Telegram group. Sometimes she's able to put out videos, and this week we got a mix of both. So starting with Monday, a video report came out, which you guys can check out here shortly. Even if you're not a member, that should be releasing on YouTube and Rumble very shortly. So she talks a little bit about the UN General Assembly meeting, and you may have seen some interesting video that came out of that. It's interesting what they choose to promote from these meetings. It's like they know a meeting is going on. Of course, they're not going to give us the real story, but they give us these little tidbits of stupid stuff, like the escalator not working for Trump, how when he goes to get on it, it stops, and apparently his teleprompter didn't work. And I can tell you firsthand, it is very frustrating when the teleprompter doesn't work. But I didn't feel too bad for Trump, so I don't really know what was going on there. But that's the stuff they choose to tell us about. One of the things that Kim talks about in her video on Monday is how there was other stuff going on behind the scenes. So the UN is broke, just like the U.S. government. They don't have any money, and it's kind of becoming a ghost town over there. Some of the higher ups, which I'm assuming did not have an organic soul, as we talked about last week, have just been disappearing. They're just going away. So, they were kind of running the show. And so when the people that are running the show don't run the show anymore, what are you going to do? And you have no money. Okay. Another thing that's been talked about is how Trump, whatever that Trump thing is, whatever's playing Trump right now, because it's not actually the original Donald Trump, how Trump and the UN signed some sort of peace accord. And I don't know if you've been hearing stuff about that. Trump is supposed to be the president of peace. Isn't that what he claims? Which is a joke. But this peace accord ties into Gaza. Okay, we're going to talk about that in just a second. And also, it's like when Congress passes a bill. It is rarely about whatever they say it's about. It's about all the other stuff they tack into it, right? That they tack onto it, that they don't tell you about, that they're just trying to get passed. And so they put it under a different name and they hope no one finds out about it, or at least the public doesn't find out about it, right? So this quote unquote peace accord was supposed to tie into a digital ID system. And, I've been watching videos online. There's a lot of people releasing a lot of fear-based videos about digital ID. Let's just dispel any rumors about this right now. Was that their intent? Yes, it was. It was a very real thing that they wanted to do. They do not have the infrastructure to pull this off. Okay. And any little remnants of systems that Kim and her team finds are dismantled. So whatever they were hoping to do here by tying into some sort of digital ID system, that has been dismantled. And who knows if they could have even pulled it off with what they were trying to put together. I mean, think about putting everyone on digital ID. There are so many people in this world that are not digital, period, that live in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the idea of it is simply ridiculous, but let's just dispel rumors. There is no digital ID system. That is not happening, period. But that doesn't mean they're not going to try to do certain things. They just don't have the infrastructure and never will to make something like that happen. Okay, let's get back to this whole peace thing. Trump, again, whatever that thing is, wants to apparently be the president of the Gaza Strip. Why not? He likes to build casinos in pretty places. And, he's already told us before through social media that apparently Gaza Strip is going to be an amazing place for casinos. This is allegedly supposed to be an interim position for him, but it's never about just developing land and what's best for the people. Of course, they don't care what happens to the people of Gaza and the Palestinians. That's quite obvious. But this is really, what else is going on behind the scenes here? This is about a war chest and funding that was supposed to come with this war chest. So that's the first soundbite that I want to play. Is about this war chest. What's going on here? And this is also, by the way, and after I played this soundbite, we're going to talk a little bit more about that military meeting that happened this week. Yeah, I got a lot to say on that. But first, here's Kim, head of the Global Intelligence Agency, telling us more about this war chest.
Now, I know quite a bit about Palestine and the Gaza Strip. And of course, there's gas and minerals and things of that nature there. But did you know that for many, many years, Bush Sr., in his position, not as president, but as Black Eagle or head of the Order of the Black Sun, also donated a lot of money every year to the Gaza Strip? Now, that was meant for protests and to keep the fight going between the Gaza Strip and the Israelis. And the Israelis were also funded by the same Black Eagle Trust. If you've been around for a while, you've probably heard about Black Eagle Trust. I personally hold a copy of the Black Book in which all the accounts were listed. I also had full access to all those accounts too. And, some of them existed, some of them didn't exist, but when you have full access to something, you pretty much can do whatever you want. And in this case, I hit a lot of delete buttons. I don't think the delete button, on the Golden Age AI or even Alpha, because I've been doing that for a long time, it was probably going to work anymore. It's all worn out due to the amount of deleting of that trust. However, there's a lot of rumors going around about Bush Sr. right now. And some of those rumors are that there is a trust, a war chest, if you will, that he controlled. And they believe that by October 1st, so by Wednesday, they will have access to this trust. Now, this has caused quite a bit of interesting activity to happen. But part of the reason why they are saying that Palestine, and Trump is going to be the new president of Palestine, is because of this little war chest and funding that used to be allocated every single year to Gaza Strip and Palestine. Now, they haven't gotten any of that money since about 2007. However, it's been building up in fake numbers on a screen for quite a long time now. So that's a lot of money. And of course, the big fat orange thing that's in the White House wants to control it. Sorry for my negative talk about these people these days, because it's just ridiculous. I mean, it really is. They are just ridiculous these days. But anyway, so he feels he can get his hands on this 10 billion plus per annum that was allocated since 2007, which was the last time any money came out. And he's going to use that money to initiate this 12-point peace plan with a board of probably the worst people in the world.
Yeah, no surprise there. Kim continues to say that this isn't going to go very far because they're going to find out real quickly there's no money. All right, so let's talk about this crazy military meeting. There are so many videos online, people talking about Pete Hegseth, who is the defense secretary, or whatever he wants to be called, the secretary of war, whatever, rah, rah, rah. And this crazy speech that he gave, and then Trump came on and said, hey, you guys can leave if you want to leave, but then, you're going to get demoted, ha, 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 ha. Just weird, right? These videos that are coming out. And I could tell because they're showing these generals and admirals, and I'm like, this is not real. Like, I'm not saying it was AI, but I'm like, this is not why all these people gathered. This was not some military ethos, like raw, get in better shape situation. It's a really crappy narrative, but that's the narrative that everyone was fed. And I'm kind of surprised that people think it was just about that. But regardless, let's talk about what was really going on here. There was a plan to declare global martial law. And then a lot of other things were going to happen, but didn't quite turn out as they had hoped.
So there are somewhere between 800 to 1,000 generals, admirals, and other high-ranking military and intelligence officials from around the world that have been invited to a meeting in Washington, D.C. This meeting is due to occur by Wednesday. It was supposed to occur tomorrow, and they have delayed that meeting until Wednesday. Now, they're citing that the reason for the delay is there are certain people that are due to attend this meeting that can't quite make it on time. Now, I don't believe that. And quite frankly, these people don't even know they can't make it on time, because the ones that are being cited when confronted or asked why they can't make it, they said, I don't know what you're talking about. I can make it. It's just a liar's club over there right now. But the reason for this whole meeting is because they are planning on declaring global martial law in an effort to achieve peace. There's a lot of problems with this one here, guys, because, those Trump operatives, they're political operatives. They are not financial folk. I know a lot of them believe that they participated in the economic downfall of, for example, the Soviet Union, or other operations and coups that involved a financial downfall of a country. But that really wasn't the case. They just happened to be there on the ground. They rang 2 or 3 bells, and there were 1,000 other bells that were ringing in the background by varying folk, oftentimes Marduk and others, that would actually make the operation run. But because they don't understand the inner workings of financial systems, they all, including the Jesuit order and other military-type orders, are all believing a lie. They believe that this war chest, which was born out of the Black Eagle Trust, which has been around for a long period of time, they believe that this money is moving around the world in an off-ledger type way. Now, in reality, what is actually happening is they are looking at a bunch of mirrors. A bunch of mirrors that come from several different places that we have already been. And by a mirror, it is merely a reflection of numbers on a screen with no allocation numbers at all. If a digital form of cash, and I'm not talking about crypto here necessarily, I'm talking about cash that you would see if you were to log in online in your bank account and you see your balance, that is cash. So that's a digital form of cash, also known as M1 in a lot of parts of the world. That's what they're seeing. But there's no allocation numbers, however, on any of those accounts, which means that it's just numbers on a screen. Be like if you made yourself a nice spreadsheet on your home laptop or computer and put Citibank and Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase and varying banks in the Cayman Islands, and I'm giving you all these locations for a reason. And you put $100 billion in the balance line. Now, could you go to any of those banks and spend that money? No, you can't, because it's not real and the bank doesn't recognize it's real. And the same thing will actually happen when they try to use any of these mirrors. Many, many, many of these mirrors and the actual originating locations here and elsewhere in AI systems have gone away over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. Many, and I mean thousands of any type of these alleged illicit almost was funds in every country in the world have gone away. Now, this is just part of the dismantling of a debt system, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second here. But back to regular news. So in the regular news, all these generals have been shown these fake mirrors, and they all believe that these funds are going to be made available to them in this meeting. Now, originally that meeting was tomorrow. So they believed that they are going to attend this huge planning meeting because they have all been told individually that they are going to be the heads of their respective countries under global martial law. And as head of their respective countries, they of course would also be in charge of all the financial dealings of said countries. Yeah. Well, they may have found out today that those mirrors aren't real, nor do a lot of them exist anymore.
Okay, so hold that thought for a second, because that has expanded since that report came out. Again, that was Monday's report from Kim, and people were just starting to find out that, you know, this whole global martial law isn't happening, and they're starting to ask a lot of questions. Okay, so hold that thought for a second. Kim also talked on Monday about powering the debt system. So as governments start to collapse, you know, we're returning to really getting to know each other again, right? More community building and not so much having these horrible overlords that, you know, make all these decisions for us and steal our energy and all the other nefarious stuff that they have done to us over the years. So this whole plan is to change the financial system, which so much of that has already happened on the back end. But also, we have to make it so that we're not continually in debt. And when we talk about humanity being in debt, it really has nothing to do with what's in your bank account or how much you owe, you know, for your home or your credit cards or things like that. This is more of an energy debt. You can look at it that way. And it was constantly being powered, meaning there were constantly things happening that put us in more and more debt. And it gave these beings that were kind of in charge of this system, and humans were involved as well, the ability to take things from us, take our energy, take everything that really powers humanity, take that from us and use it in other places in the omniverse, right? This was the basis for trade, really. Humans are batteries, okay? So how do we make sure that they are not taking this energy from us anymore? Because that is directly connected to the debt system. And when Kim in the past has tried to transfer money to people, this has become a problem. Because the system would say, hey, they've got so much debt, that you couldn't possibly transfer enough money to get humans out of debt to be able to accept money, okay? Which essentially, money is essentially energy, okay? That's what we view as energy, to power things, to be able to do things in our world. Right now, we've got this middleman, we call it money, and we are moving to a stage where we can get energy directly from God, source, the creator of the universe. But right now, we're still kind of caught up mentally in this whole idea that we do something and we get money for it. Now, soon we'll be able to, cut out the middleman, but it's gonna take a little bit of time, right? That's just how we're trained to believe that society works. Okay, so if we're going to be given money, we have to make sure that we can actually use it, and it's not just going to disappear because we have so much debt. So Kim talks about powering the debt system. What is actually powering this? How are they taking our energy? How are they using this against us? And if you felt a lot of discomfort this week, I'll tell you what, the whole week for me has been off. I think I'm on day 7 of flu symptoms, just feeling achy. I've been taking naps every day. I've got like 0 energy right now. So if you are like me and you are experiencing something like that, it is because they are really on high alert trying to steal as much as they can from you to power their system. Okay. And to power themselves, actually. So this is going to be a little bit longer of a soundbite because we're going to talk about the debt system. And the Kim's also going to explain how they were using this and a location where her and her team found that they were harnessing this. And they were able to take that out, which is a major win for us this week. So here's Kim.
There are certain things that power the debt system. Every single thing in the world that you do that affects you is tied to the financial system. I cannot stress to you how much information we have found out and how many things that were tied to that financial system. You probably also noticed since the last time we talked that you almost feel out of breath sometimes. And then it lasts for a short period of time, and then everything goes back to normal. I've had people tell me that they felt like they couldn't breathe for a short period of time, and that could be because, well, they're trying to steal your breath using some kind of aspect of the financial system, and the fact that you are an asset of that system. This is how they feel anyway. Well, others are talking about energy drains, what felt like, attacks on their person, pains randomly, things happening and then getting better, a lot of anxiety, a lot of feelings of being trapped. That was the other thing that someone had said to me too. And all of these are due to the waning power of not only their persons, but of systems. So I want to take a minute and talk about power and how they function, because this is actually important. The next time you want to pick up some mainstream media crazy, or you want to watch what's going on at different places in the world, whether it's true or not, and you don't want to be the subject of these types of attacks that they do and black magic that they do, and how to kind of defend yourself, during the time of transition here, which is moving very, very fast, by the way. Understand this. There are people in this world that have gone very, very dark. In order for their bodily systems to function, they must have dark energy. And it's not just your dark energy, it's also fear, other types of dark ethereum. They must have that consciousness, they must have that, and they must have a way to siphon it from you. Now, ways that they generate that. You might have noticed there have been some shootings, quite a few of them lately. And one of them was in Michigan, and I'm aware of that. It happened at a Mormon church there, and there are some people that died, and they're definitely plastering the news with these types of things. Now, the reason why they must do this, the Charlie Kirk situation, all the other things you're hearing in the news, the reason why they actually have to do this in order to survive at this point is because you are generating an enormous amount of fear, hate, anger. Who do we blame this on? Think about how you feel when you see those reports. Oh my gosh, this was down the street from me in Middle America. How did this happen? When you generate all of this focus and power on these people, if there is any bit of the debt system left, they don't have to do anything but take that dark energy that you are now generating, that fearful energy, that angry energy, that hate, and they just absorb it straight through the financial system. I know that sounds crazy. It's not like a debit card. It's not like a credit card, but it runs the whole backside of the financial system. And by backside, I mean the real part where they buy and sell. Now, without this energy and without the ability to siphon it off your person as a willing participant in financial affairs, they will not survive. They literally will die, and many have died. Now, what happened on Thursday night was critical, really, because they do have and have had other power sources, which then gives them the ability to do the things that they do to us. Now, one of those main power sources, or stolen breath, from one of the original Melchizedeks, because we've had many. Yes, the person you know as Jesus or Christ was one of those people, but there have been many that have come and gone for hundreds of thousands of years here. And the first one that they managed to capture was put in captivity. Now, the being no longer is there, meaning the person is obviously no longer alive, but they managed to, and now this was done not by human beings. So this was not done by your deep state by any stretch of the imagination. Technology was far more advanced at that time, and it was done by a bunch of beings that really knew what they were doing, and they were not people. So this being, the breath was extracted from this being, and it was held in a place called North Sentinel Island, which is an island that belongs to India. It's an interesting little island if you want to do some research on it, but it's inhabited only by a tribe that has chosen to live in isolation. Anyone comes near that island, they will kill you. It is heavily defended by this tribe. The tribe is well aware of the activities that happen on this island that are not of an earthly nature, meaning they know what's there. They know that there are beings there as well that protect it. You know, you've heard of stories like Skinwalker Ranch and other places in the, where weird and strange things happen, not only in the United States, but elsewhere. Well, this is one of those places where you have a lot of weird and strange non-humans floating around to protect a power source. That breath has been kept in a certain way, or was kept in such a certain way where they could use it continuously as a source of power. Now, we were like, oh, look at that. That doesn't need to happen. Not at all. It doesn't need to power those weird quantum AI dark systems, and it certainly doesn't need to power these deep state people at all and their overlays and black energy and all of the other things it was kind of used to power. So we thought, well, gee, we really need to take that out. And take that out we did. Breath was returned to source where it originally belonged, was no longer kept there in a captive type way. And, well, that's when all hell started to break loose. Horribly. All night long on Thursday and all day long on Friday, because they knew it was a matter of time.
Okay, so that's actually a good thing for us. If they are on borrowed time, that means pretty soon they're not going to be able to steal our energy. They're probably not even going to be on this planet anymore. And I mean, that means they go back to source. No one's escaping anywhere. Okay, so that was Monday's report. On Wednesday, Kim came out with a statement. So I'll go ahead and release that. This was posted on our Telegram channel for CARE. It says, this is Kim talking, it's barely sundown on the East Coast, which is when the generals were expecting results. They are just starting to realize something is wrong. No catastrophic event is occurring as they had planned. We are still watching things very closely, as you never know what they will try. I wonder if they will realize it's a game and they are pawns like the rest of us. I'll give you a full update either tomorrow or Friday, as results and information are barely starting to trickle in as they pick their jaw up off the floor. Source is good. He is always with us. Okay, so Friday came and they started messing with our technology, guys. And I can testify to this. When Kim and I would record live together, we got messed with constantly. You know, technology wouldn't work. Something wouldn't record. Teleprompters wouldn't work. You know, I sympathize with Trump and his prompter not working because they have done it to us a gazillion times. So apparently Friday was one of those situations where Kim and Mike tried to record and it just wasn't happening. So they released the report today. So today is Saturday. It's the 4th. The graphics on the video are going to say the 3rd, but that's because we had already created the graphics. So this information I'm about to give you literally just came out today. So fresh, hot off the press. Okay, we're going to pick things back up with this generals meeting. And like I said, everything that has been reported on it is just staged information. That was for the public. Okay, so to me, it's a really lame movie. I mean, again, Hegseth, I wasn't impressed by his performance. You know, what is it, Siskel and Ebert, that they gave the thumbs up, thumbs down, like 2 thumbs down for all those performances. And, you know, the generals and admirals in the, in the audience are just sitting there not doing anything. The whole thing was lame. Okay, they need a better director or something. It's just horrible. So let's talk a little bit more about this. What were the generals expecting? Why are they so frustrated now? And what caused them to go out searching for more information? Here's Kim.
In both alternative media and the mainstream media, we have seen a display of generals talking about the military. We have heard about the fact that there is no military readiness. There was a lot of discouraging comments made by some of the leaders of military on the news, which has caused a lot of disruption in patriot communities and that type of thing. And that's exactly what it was meant to do. You see, we have a bunch of secret space program operatives who are trying to run a single government and, well, the entire world for that matter. And they're not doing a very good job. They act and then think. They make statements, then try and do. They are so overconfident and ego-driven that everyone follows along with the bouncing ball, well, until maybe they don't. But everything you saw for public consumption in that meeting was just that. They had orchestrated a narrative. They claim they're in control of the media. You know, they're claiming that they're in control of a lot of things. And honestly, it's just a bunch of ego talking. And by ego, well, an AI directly to their head. Now, after some disappointment of hundreds of generals on Wednesday. And then, of course, again, that was pushed, just give us 24 hours, they said, and this was pushed off until the 2nd. And I had some people reach out to me. Some of these people are part of, for example, the Order of the Jesuits. Some of these people are a part of other groups. They are actual humans and also part of military groups as well, not only in the U.S., but elsewhere. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. And they're like, how many times are we going to do this? Something is wrong here. These people say all this stuff is going to happen. They do everything they're supposed to do. And they were all promised varying top positions for their work in the alleged new order, which never happened. Everybody now has been pushed off to the 6th, like I said, they would be, and, which is Monday. So is anything going to happen on Monday? It is a full moon. The sun will rise and it will set. And those that are still waiting for something on Monday are going to be again disappointed. And there's a definitive reason now. Things are becoming clearer as to why the deep state secret space program operatives do what they do. This information started trickling down amongst the ranks as people were searching for answers. It's time they get some answers. Some reached out to me. I answered their questions. There's supposed to be further calls and talks this week. Some starting today. We'll see. Waiting to see if they're going to give us a call today, but we'll see. But nonetheless, as part of this searching for information, and what's really happening, we kind of pointed them in the right direction. And by a right direction, I mean someone that actually is willing to answer their questions, is not afraid of any order anywhere or rank and file. I call this guy, and for this report, we're going to call him the cowboy. He speaks with a southern drawl when he talks on the phone, and he's told the secret space program, in the militaries of the ACIO, many times that you've done hitched your wagon to the wrong horse. The cowboy is kind of an interesting character because he explained exactly who he was in this call. And I was really shocked and surprised, really. I mean, I knew he was kind of up there in the world, but I didn't realize exactly, what he had done and where he had been. So he explains to these people, the cowboy, he explains to these people that he has been in the secret space program for a long time. He explained that he was one of the originals. Therefore, some of the programs that they have run on the heads of the younger folk, he was not involved in. More importantly, he actually ran some of them for a long time. He explained that his first trip off the planet was about the 6th century BC, and he's been coming and going ever since. And if he had stayed on Earth, he explained that he would be several hundred years old by now. He also told them that he ran a cyborg division out of Andromeda for quite a while. And by running a cyborg division, it's not just about a bunch of robots walking around like the kind of Elon Musk technology we see in the news. It's about you. And it's not only about you, it's about the secret space program and all their operatives. You see, he told them by about the 1960s, anyone that had been recruited after that time went through a much more stringent program in which their brain is no longer their own. They were all tied to an AI system that can be manipulated and changed at any given moment in time from the facility in Andromeda. He said this is the reason why the secret space program just keeps going. Now at least we understand why the hamster wheel. And the good news is that some of these people, actual Homo sapiens, that were on this call asking all kinds of questions also understand now as well. So this has resulted in a lot of subsequent meetings since this call took place last week, or earlier this week, I should say. Geez, time flies. Earlier this week, so a couple days ago. And now they have an understanding of who they are dealing with. The general consensus at the moment is we gotta get rid of these people. Now we just got to deal with a bunch of malfunctioning cyborgs walking around Washington, D.C. and every other government trying to run a country and run a planet. It looks like we could possibly get some help. It looks like there is a mutiny amongst the actual Homo sapiens that worked, for all these people.
All right. So we've got a new character to introduce into the mix, right? The cowboy, which I've already reached out to Cam and say, hey, can we interview the cowboy? I think he's got a lot of really interesting stuff to say. So I don't know if that'll go anywhere, but hello, I'd like to talk to him for sure. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about debt, and specifically the debt clock. Have you seen, if you're watching, it's usually like mainstream media, they'll put up the debt clock and we are trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Well, what is this based on? And is there really a clock? I mean, not really something you plug into the wall, but as it turns out, there's an etherical clock, and it was in Wyoming.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the real debt clock. Now, you guys will go online and you'll say, oh, look at the U.S. debt clock or the Fed debt clock or whoever's debt clocks. Then there's a climate change debt clock. And, there's a debt clock for everything out there, isn't there? You kind of wonder why that might be. You see, the origination of debt always came from create the problem and be the solution. We've indebted ourselves many times as Homo sapiens, and not without good reason in a lot of cases, really, But the original debt and the original sin also kind of went hand in hand a little bit. So times that we have indebted ourselves, we lost our moon, then the Savior comes in, it's the Savior program. Marduk comes in and Draco come in and they make a deal to get you some kind of a water control, situation so that the Homo sapiens would survive, create the problem and be the solution, knock the moon out of the orbit and then put another one in its place that is far worse than the original one. However, we're grateful that we are alive, so we are now indebted to that species or another species or another species, and on this went for eons and many, 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 many years. But the root of debt was quite surprising, when we started getting down to the base root platforms of how debt actually worked. So the original debt, especially of Homo sapiens, because that's the most important, this is what we're looking at restoring, right? Came a long, 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 long time ago. You see, you remember me talking to you about the fact that wisdom had disconnected and decided he was going to create his own realities, mostly out of death. So, if you haven't listened to that, you can listen to the last few reports. Along with wisdom came a being called Leviathan. It was one of the ancients, been around for a long time. And as soon as wisdom was disconnected, Leviathan came to be. Leviathan is an AI-generated being. It was one of the first he created. And Leviathan is, a demon. You can kind of look up the information on Leviathan if you don't know. I know I've talked about it before. But it is also the being of chaos. So when wisdom was disconnected and we were no longer connected to the blueprint of reality, the blueprint of source, the blueprint of God for creation, chaos kind of ensued. You see, nature has a natural balance to itself. When it is of source and it has its own natural rhythm, we have the perfect amount of trees. We have immortality. We have great skin suits. Our souls are our own. Our minds are our own. It's not just about the humans either. It's about things we understand. Balance has nothing to do with the balance between light and dark in this particular instance. Balance has to do with enough trees to generate enough oxygen to keep the rest of life on this planet alive. We need a certain amount of bacteria. Therefore, trees shed their leaves, and then it creates a compost, and then that feeds the soil, which then feeds the plants the following spring. We have plants that generate their own seeds, and then we replant those seeds, or, the bees take care of a lot of the work too. So there's a lot of balance of nature when you really think about how things happened here originally. We lived in basically what you would say is a Garden of Eden. We never wanted for food. We didn't have chaos. We understood the blueprint of source. No, you can't plant so many trees that there are no places for humans to live. No, you can't, build so many homes, of wood that we don't have any more trees. Therefore, we don't have enough oxygen. We understand this. We also understand, especially in parts of the world, that the animals, their natural habitats, where they live, how they eat, how they survive, the more we mess with those habitats, the more they will migrate into other areas that are undesirable. We understand that there's a balance. Now, when disconnected from that blueprint and an understanding of that balance, and you as a celestial being don't have the source blueprint, you might be, for example, a person that loves bees. Therefore, you create 100 times the amount of bees we need on Earth. And now we have an overload of bees, and, there's not enough flowers, and there's not enough trees, and there's not enough things, and now, all the bees die, or maybe you're thinking, well, I really like boats, and then you create way too many boats because you're a celestial and you have the power of manifestation to the nth degree. Think about the chaos that would ensue if everybody could manifest everything they ever wanted instantaneously in nature. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be lovely where we would have food on the table and there would be no hunger and all of those types of things. Of course, that would be wonderful. But you have to be connected to the original blueprint of source, or the new blueprint for that matter. You see, that blueprint is the key to everything. And believe it or not, when the tainted blueprint went away, it sent the other side into chaos too. This is something that kind of happened this week. So when chaos took over, chaos is the whisper in the wind that tells you to do things you might normally not do. Chaos also has another aspect to it called ego. Your ego wants you to have a nice car and the best car in the neighborhood and the greenest lawn and and all the things you see on TV. This is all programmed too of chaos and ego. Chaos and ego report to death. Now, think about that for a second. Too much of a good thing sometimes is bad. They say, for example, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, but you don't need to eat 10 pounds of apples in a day. That's a bad thing for your system. Think about what would happen, to your system if you were to do that. So good things in balance are good for everything, everyone, all plant life. It's good for everyone, and animals, of course, and everything stays in balance. But chaos wants to make sure we don't have that. Ego makes sure that we don't have the balance either. Chaos creates ego so that you'll feed the system constantly. Think about how many people work their whole life for the perfect mansion, the perfect house, the perfect car, just so they can prove to everybody that they're the man or the woman. Think about it. or the they, but anyway, the point is that, that you're the human, you're the Homo sapien, you're the one to look up to because you got it all. Chaos also, and ego also feeds power. By power, you are giving away all your power and you're giving it to something else, which then powers an AI system, which allows them to have control over your investiture plane. So investiture is not real, meaning royalty, now looking up to the royalty, and you could even say royalty is not just kings and queens. Royalty is also those that are in power over you. We strive, in some cases, a lot of people, because of ego, strive for power. Both ego and chaos are a byproduct of death. They create death. They create death of the soul because a lot of people are willing to sell their soul for it. Unfortunately, in your case, if you're not subject to any of these things, they did it for you. So there was a time when the introduction of chaos, ego came to this planet, and we damn near destroyed all of life by over manifestation and over creation. Therefore, the first simulation was created on this planet. The first simulation was created on this planet, let's just say, you could call it within the gray areas of the law, very gray, create the problem and be the solution, right? So the solution is now presented that, well, we need to do something to stop these humans from destroying themselves, the planet, and the entire omniverse, because we were travelers at that time. Still are, to some of you are. But we were travelers at that time, and we created complete and total chaos everywhere. We fell right into ego and chaos and death. So we were actually creating death. Now, the simulation, well, allegedly, it stopped us from killing not only our entire species, but allegedly the planet and many other species to go along with it, both of plants and animals, and not only on this planet, but elsewhere as well. But we didn't create the problem. But they were sure there with a solution. So those that run the simulation made a covenant and basically said that, well, we are keeping you alive, therefore you are in debt to us. We have prevented you from killing yourselves, so you are in debt to us. And then the debt clock started ticking. How long would it take us to pay them back? It's what gave them the original control over us. The financial system eventually followed as well. We gave everything. If you are going to survive and your family's going to survive, this is where they whack you right into the root chakra, and they say things like, you create your own reality. You create the matrix. They whack you right in that red root chakra and take away your fire, your spark of life, your motivation, your sense of security, stability, and grounding constantly with chaos and ego, just so you can survive. Matter of fact, that chakra didn't even exist. They moved it there. They moved it there. We did not have a red chakra. We only had gold chakras. They even gave you a false god to worship, with power, purple power, given to somebody else. They took away your original connection to the Superium and blueprint and gave you false power, both things you fear and things you strive to be, all manipulated. They took away your creativity and your joy. They took away love. Think about how much we fear love. You can say you don't, but you do in some ways. Think about all of the manipulation just to feed the following things. Because without these things, there is no artificial reality. There is no alternative universe. And that is what the secret space program strives to protect. These things are what is dissipating. Therefore, as part of dissipating the debt system, far more complicated than you would ever think in a million years, as part of dismantling the debt system, we also had to find the debt clock. You see, eventually that clock was going to run out anyway. So that's why they continuously create programs for us humans so that we are continuously in debt.
Now, the good news is Kim and her team are finding these programs, and they are going away very, very quickly. This is obviously starting to impact governments worldwide, and that's going to be interesting too. Who knows what's going to happen with that, but we will be here to bring you the latest on what happens with the U.S. government shutdown and how this impacts countries and governments around the world. So it should be a very interesting week moving forward. All right. If you guys want more information about United Network and who we are, if you want to look into becoming a member, that's great. You can visit our website at unitednetwork.earth. If you choose to become a member, that gives you instant access to all the news updates and information we put out, including our New Earth interviews, everything from Kim and the Global Intelligence Agency, and everything moving forward, because we're going to be talking about restoration very soon and how we are going to turn this whole planet around. It's a big task, and we need all of you to be part of it. All right, this is The Rundown, and I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.